Hello! Welcome back to another evening of shared stories and theories. Tonight, we're diving into something massive, the end of Stranger Things. After nearly a decade of waiting, theorizing, and watching these kids grow up on screen, we're about to get our finale. And honestly, I'm not ready. But we're doing this anyway. So here's what we're covering tonight. We'll start with where we actually are in the story, since volumes 1 and 2 have already dropped some absolutely wild revelations that changed everything we thought we knew. Then we're getting into the theories, the death predictions, because let's be real, someone's not making it out. The Mind Flayer mystery, and whether it's actually the big bad we should be worried about. Carly's extremely suspicious return, and what that might mean. We'll talk about Henry Creel's memories, that briefcase scene, and what it all points to. We're also diving into the emotional stuff, the relationships, the goodbyes, the moments that are definitely going to destroy us. The spin-off hints that the Duffer Brothers confirmed are hidden in the finale. And yeah, we'll get into some of the wilder theories floating around, even the ones that are probably completely wrong, but fun to think about anyway. There's a lot to unpack before December 31st. If you enjoy these theory deep dives and want to support the channel, consider subscribing. But for now, grab your Eggos, get comfortable under a blanket, maybe keep some tissues nearby, because we're going to be talking about some heavy stuff, and let's begin. This isn't just another season finale, this is the end of a journey that started in 2016, when we first met a kid with a shaved head and telekinetic powers, and a group of friends playing Dungeons and Dragons in a basement. We've watched them fight monsters, save the world multiple times, fall in love, lose people, and grow up. The Duffer Brothers have said they've known the final scene since early on, that it feels inevitable to them. And in just a few days, we'll finally know if that inevitability lands the way they hope it will. So if you've been watching along, you know that volumes 1 and 2 have already answered some massive questions we've had for years, while somehow creating entirely new ones to stress about. We finally know what the Upside Down actually is, thanks to the revelations in Episode 6, Escape from Camazotz, and Episode 7. And it's not what we thought. For 4 seasons, everyone assumed the Upside Down was some kind of alternate dimension, like a mirror world stuck in a nightmare version of Hawkins. But Dustin, being the genius he is, figured out the truth after finding Dr. Brenner's journals. The Upside Down isn't a dimension at all. It's a wormhole, a bridge between our world and another realm that the kids have started calling the Abyss, which the Duffers originally named Dimension X in their mythology documents. That's a Ninja Turtles reference, apparently. This changes everything. It explains why the Russians couldn't open gates anywhere, except Hawkins back in Season 3. The wormhole is anchored here specifically, stuck on November 6th, 1983. The day 11 made contact with the Demogorgon, while Brenner was forcing her to find it. The Upside Down we've been seeing, that creepy vine-covered mirror of Hawkins, is basically just the tunnel. The Abyss is what's on the other side, and that's where Vecna actually lives. The Abyss looks completely different from the Upside Down. It's this red, Mars-like hellscape. Think of those Season 4 flashbacks when Eleven sent Henry there as a kid. That realm is apparently the original home of all the creatures we've been fighting. Demogorgons, Demobats, and according to Dustin's theory, the Mind Flayer itself. Speaking of which, Will used powers in Episode 4. But here's the thing, they're not his own abilities. He's borrowing Vecna's powers by tapping into the hive mind connection from his Season 2 possession. He absolutely destroyed a group of Demogorgons using that bone-snapping, body-lifting technique that looks exactly like how Vecna kills people, which is deeply concerning for a bunch of reasons we'll get into later. He can only access these abilities when he's near the hive mind. They're not innate like Eleven's, but yeah, Will's not just the kid who got possessed anymore. He can channel something dark and powerful, even if it's not truly his. Carly came back. Number 8. The girl from that polarizing Season 2 episode, where Eleven went to Chicago and met her punk rock sister. She's been captured by the military held by Dr. K, who's played by Linda Hamilton, and is basically the new Brenner. The military has been experimenting on her, and we found out they're trying to create a new generation of powered kids using blood from Henry and Carly. The pregnant women getting transfusions were dying, though, so that's not going great for them. Carly escaped with 11 and Hopper's help, and now she's part of the team heading into the final battle. But honestly, Carly's been acting suspicious. She keeps pushing 11 towards sacrificing herself, saying it's the only way to end the cycle of experiments and government hunting. Hopper doesn't trust her at all. He straight up said he won't hesitate to kill her if she makes one wrong move. More on that later, because there are theories. Max and Holly Wheeler, of all people, have been exploring Vecna's mindscape together. Holly named it Camazotz, after the evil planet from A Wrinkle in Time, her favourite book. They've been touring Henry's memories trying to find his weaknesses, and they stumbled on something huge. A flashback to young Henry in a cave in Nevada, where he encountered a wounded man with a metallic briefcase. The man shot Henry in the hand. Henry killed him with a rock in this absolutely brutal scene, and then opened the briefcase. We didn't see what was inside because Max pulled Holly away before the memory finished. The Duffer Brothers confirmed we'll see that briefcase again in the finale. Whatever was in it, whatever happened in that cave, it's connected to Henry's transformation and his fear of caves. Max noticed that Vecna is still afraid of something in his past, still human enough to have vulnerabilities, and that cave is one of them. This connects to the Broadway play Stranger Things. The first shadow, which most people haven't seen but is apparently crucial to understanding Season 5. The play reveals that Henry was accidentally transported to Dimension X as a kid on his 8th birthday. He was gone for 12 hours and came back different. Changed blood, altered personality, psychic powers. The stranger in the cave, the briefcase, it's all part of that origin story. Jonathan and Nancy broke up, or rather, they mutually agreed they've been too focused on saving the world to realise they're not right for each other anymore. Jonathan unproposed, which is both sad and weirdly mature. They were stuck in a room in the upside-down version of Hawkins' lab, surrounded by this weird, solidifying goo, and just had an honest conversation about their relationship. It wasn't dramatic or angry, just honest. And now the door's potentially open for Steve, though Nancy made it clear nothing's really there with him either. She might just want to be on her own, honestly. The gang has a plan for the finale, and it's absolutely a suicide mission. They're going to use the bath at Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down to get 11 close enough to Vecna's mind. Max is going to guide her through his memories, since she knows the mindscape inside and out. Carly's going to follow them in to help fight their brother, and while all that's happening, they're planting a bomb near the exotic matter that's keeping the wormhole open. The idea is to set a timer, get everyone out, and let the bridge collapse. When it does, everything goes with it. The Upside Down, the Abyss, the Mind Flayer, Vecna, all of it. It's desperate and dangerous and relies on absolutely perfect timing. If they can't get to the Abyss until the merging is almost complete, and then they have to fight Vecna, plant the bomb, and escape before it goes off. There are about 1 million ways this could go wrong. Dustin and Steve actually made a pact to die together, or not at all, which is both touching and terrifying, and 11 seems to have agreed to Carly's plan to stay behind when the Upside Down explodes. So that's where we are. The Upside Down is a wormhole, not a dimension. The Abyss is the real threat. Will has powers. Carly's back and suspicious. Max knows Vecna's weaknesses. The briefcase mystery is unresolved, and everyone's heading into what they fully acknowledge is probably a suicide mission, with a plan that has to work perfectly, or they all die and the world ends. No pressure or anything. Let's talk about the Mind Flayer, or rather, let's talk about where the hell the Mind Flayer actually is, because it's been radio silent all season, and that's deeply concerning. Think about it. The Mind Flayer has been the big threat since Season 2, this massive, spider-like entity that possessed Will, controlled Billy, and the flayed in Season 3, orchestrated entire armies of creatures through the hive mind. It's been the looming presence behind everything, and now, in the final season, when everything's supposedly coming to a head, it's just gone. Not mentioned, not seen, nowhere. That's not an oversight. The Duffers don't forget about their main villains. So here's what we know from previous seasons. In Season 4, Vecna claimed that he created the Mind Flayer. He said that when Eleven sent him to the Upside Down, or the Abyss as we're calling it now, he found this cloud of particles just floating there. He shaped it with his powers into the spider form, inspired by his childhood obsession with black widows. He made it an extension of his will, basically a tool to carry out his plans across the dimensional barrier. That was the story. Vecna's in charge. The Mind Flayer is his creation. End of discussion. Except the first shadow completely contradicts that. The Broadway play, which was created by the Duffers and is canon to the show, reveals that young Henry encountered the Mind Flayer before he became Vecna. When he was accidentally transported to Dimension X at age 8, the shadow entity was already there. It influenced him, corrupted him. That's what changed him from a normal kid into someone who would eventually murder his own family. So if the Mind Flayer existed before Vecna, and it influenced him first, who's actually in control here? Did Vecna really take over this entity and reshape it, or is that just what he believes? What if the Mind Flayer has been playing him this whole time, the way it played Will in Season 2? There's this theory gaining traction that Vecna is actually the Darth Vader of Stranger Things. He thinks he's the big bad, thinks he's serving his own vision of reshaping the world. But really, he's just a powerful servant to something much worse. The Mind Flayer is the Emperor, the true force behind everything, and Vecna, for all his power and godlike posturing, is still just a pawn. This would explain a lot. In Volume 2, when Vecna is talking to the kidnapped children, he tells them he wants to destroy a shadow monster. Now everyone assumed he was lying, manipulating them. But what if he wasn't? What if he genuinely sees the Mind Flayer as a threat he needs to eliminate, but he's been too corrupted by it to break free? Max made an observation that feels important. She said Vecna is still human, still afraid of things, and one of the things he's terrified of is that cave in Nevada. The cave where he first encountered something that changed him forever. If that something was the Mind Flayer, then Vecna's fear makes perfect sense. He's afraid of the thing that made him what he is, the thing that might still be controlling him. There's also this moment in Volume 2 where Holly escapes from Vecna's citadel in the Abyss, and when she breaks free, this black smoke blasts out of her. It looks exactly like the black smoke that came out of Will in Season 2 when they were trying to exorcise the Mind Flayer from him. That's not a coincidence. That's a visual callback. The Duffers are telling us something. And speaking of visual clues, have you noticed that Vecna's lair in the Abyss has this massive spider-like structure? It looks suspiciously like the Mind Flayer's exoskeleton. Like maybe Vecna isn't living in his own citadel. Maybe he's living inside the Mind Flayer's prison. Camazotz, as Holly named it, might not be Vecna's domain at all. It might be where the Mind Flayer keeps him. In A Wrinkle in Time, which the show keeps referencing, Camazotz is secretly ruled by a dark force called IT. The Mind Flayer could very well be IT, the shadowy presence that actually controls everything, while Vecna thinks he's the master. Will can still sense the Mind Flayer. He's had this connection since Season 2, and it hasn't gone away. In Season 4, when Vecna was actively attacking, Will could feel it. He called it a psychic connection to the hive mind. But here's the thing. In Volume 1 of Season 5, when the Demogorgons in Russia were being killed, Will felt that too. Dustin and Steve were in pain from the hive mind feedback. But Vecna? Vecna wasn't affected at all. That's huge. If Vecna really controlled the hive mind completely, he should have felt it when his creatures died. But he didn't. He's separate from the hive mind somehow, which means either he's lying about controlling it, or something else is actually in charge. Something that can insulate him from the feedback while still using the network of creatures. The Mind Flayer has been strangely absent all season. No appearances, barely any mentions, but we know from Dustin's theory that it originated in the abyss, along with all the other creatures. It's been there this whole time, and if there's one thing horror stories have taught us, it's that the monster you don't see is often the most dangerous one. I think the Mind Flayer is waiting, conserving strength. Hopper made it clear he didn't want 11 going on missions because he needed her at full power for the final confrontation. What if the Mind Flayer is doing the exact same thing? It's been hurt by 11 before. The gate closings in seasons 2 and 3 damaged it. So maybe it's learned. Maybe it's staying dormant, letting Vecna handle the frontline work, gathering all its strength for one massive final battle where it has the best chance of winning. The Duffers have been holding their cards close for years about what the Upside Down really is and where it came from. They wrote a 20-page mythology document explaining everything. And now that we're finally getting those answers, the Mind Flayer is conspicuously missing from the conversation. That feels intentional. That feels like they're saving the biggest reveal for last. Vecna might be defeated in the first half of the finale, and then the Mind Flayer shows up as the true final boss. Or Vecna might actually team up with the kids against the Mind Flayer, realizing too late that he was never in control. Either way, I don't think we've seen the last of that spider-shaped nightmare. The Mind Flayer's silence feels deliberate, like it's waiting for the perfect moment, and when it finally appears, it's going to change everything we thought we understood about this entire story. Now, I need us to talk about Carly because something is deeply off about her return, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Carly was introduced back in Season 2, Episode 7, which was easily the most divisive episode of the entire series. You either loved seeing 11 meet another number and explore her identity outside of Hawkins, or you hated the punk rock gang subplot and just wanted to get back to the main story. Most people fell into the second camp. The episode was so polarizing that a lot of fans thought we'd never see Carly again. But she's back now, and her role in Season 5 is raising all kinds of red flags. Here's what we know. Dr. K, the new Brenner-style villain running military experiments, had Carly locked up in the upside-down version of Hawkins' lab. Carly discovered that the military was using her blood to try and create a new generation of powered children. They were giving pregnant women blood transfusions from Carly, attempting to pass abilities to the babies. It wasn't working. Carly's blood wasn't strong enough. The women were in agony, dying from the experiments. Dr. K needs 11's blood specifically because only 11's blood is truly like Henry's, powerful enough to potentially create new psychic children. It's horrific, and it gives Kaylee a very legitimate reason to want the whole program destroyed permanently. 11 and Hopper rescued her during their infiltration, and Carly joined the team. She's been helpful in planning the final assault. She can create illusions, manipulate minds, and apparently she shares some kind of psychic connection with the other numbers, including 11. On paper, she's a valuable asset, but Hopper doesn't trust her at all. He explicitly told her that if she makes one wrong move, he won't hesitate to kill her. That's not protective dad Hopper being generally suspicious of everyone. That's Hopper seeing something specific that makes him think she's a threat. And Hopper's instincts about people are usually pretty good. The biggest issue is what Carly keeps telling 11. She's constantly pushing the idea that the only way to truly end everything, the experiments, the government hunting, the cycle of violence, is for both of them to sacrifice themselves. She frames it as logical, inevitable. The military has Henry's blood now. As long as 11 is alive, they'll keep trying to replicate her. The only solution, according to Carly, is for 11 to die in the Upside Down, when it collapses, taking the threat with her. On the surface, there's a twisted logic to it. If 11 survives, Dr. K and whoever replaces her will keep experimenting, keep hunting, keep trying to weaponize psychic abilities. 11 would never be safe. But here's the thing. Carly isn't framing this as a terrible last resort. She's framing it as the right choice, the noble choice, and she's pushing it constantly, wearing 11 down emotionally until she agrees. That's manipulation. Whether Carly realizes it or not, she's manipulating 11 into accepting her own death. There are two main theories about what's actually going on with Carly. The first is that she's working with Vecna in some capacity. This one has some interesting evidence. Throughout the season, Carly refers to Henry as brother. Now, all the numbers call each other sister or brother. That's not unusual. But the way Carly says it has this almost affectionate quality to it. She doesn't say it with the pain and trauma that 11 has when talking about Henry. She says it like she still has some kind of bond with him. 11 has never once called Henry her brother. Not in season 4 when she was reliving the massacre, not now. To her, he's one, he's Vecna, he's the enemy. But Carly calls him brother, and it sounds genuine. What if Henry helped Carly escape from the lab originally? What if they've had some kind of relationship or understanding that we don't know about? Vecna would absolutely benefit from 11 sacrificing herself. She's the only person who's ever truly hurt him, the only one who banished him to the abyss in the first place. If Carly can convince 11 to stay behind when the bomb goes off, Vecna might not even need to defeat her. She'd eliminate herself. The second theory is even wilder, but has been gaining serious traction online. Some people think Carly actually is the Mind Flayer, or at least that she's being controlled by it the way Billy was controlled in season 3. Here's the evidence for this one. The Mind Flayer is consistently shown with 8 limbs in its spider form. Carly is number 8. That could be a coincidence, but the Duffers don't really do coincidences with the numbered kids. Every detail about them means something. Also, Carly's name itself is significant. In Hindu mythology, Carly is the goddess of time, destruction, death, and rebirth. She represents endings, cycles, and necessary annihilation. Given how carefully Stranger Things uses symbolism and mythology, it seems unlikely that they just randomly chose this name. Carly the goddess destroys the world to remake it. Carly the character is pushing for destruction as the solution. The timing of her escape from the lab is also suspicious. She got out before Henry did, apparently. She had time to establish herself, to develop her abilities outside of Brenner's control. What if during that time she encountered the Mind Flayer? What if it possessed her or made some kind of deal with her? We've seen how the Mind Flayer works. It doesn't always take full control. Sometimes it influences, guides, whispers. And there's the matter of her powers. Carly creates illusions. She makes people see things that aren't there. The Mind Flayer has been called the Shadow Monster, a being that operates through deception and hidden influence. If the Mind Flayer could possess someone whose entire ability is based on making people perceive false realities, that would be devastatingly effective. In episode 5, there's a scene where Carly is talking to 11 about shared consciousness, about how the powered individuals can connect minds. Linnea Berthelsen, who plays Carly, actually asked the Duffers to film the head shaving scene on camera to show the trauma she endured. That kind of attention to her character's pain and history makes it seem like she's meant to be sympathetic. But what if that's the point? What if we're supposed to sympathise with her, trust her, right up until the betrayal? To be honest, I'm not entirely sold on the Carly is the Mind Flayer theory. It feels a bit too elaborate, and there's not quite enough concrete evidence, but the Carly is working with Vecna theory. That one has legs. At minimum, she's compromised somehow, whether she knows it or not. Her constant push for 11's sacrifice, Hopper's distrust, the affectionate way she talks about Henry, it all adds up to something being very wrong. Maybe she genuinely believes sacrifice is the only option, and she's just a traumatized person who's given up on the possibility of survival. Maybe she's been manipulated by the Mind Flayer or Vecna without realizing it. Maybe she's actively betraying them. I don't know which it is, but I know I don't trust her, and apparently neither does Hopper. Whatever Carly's true intentions are, she's going to be crucial to the finale. She's following 11 into Vecna's mind. She'll be right there during the most vulnerable, dangerous moment. And if she turns on 11 then, or if she's been compromised and doesn't even realize she's working against them, it could cost everyone everything. So let's just rip the band-aid off. Someone's going to die, probably multiple someones. The question is who? Stranger Things has killed characters before. Barb, Bob, Billy, Eddie. Each death hit hard because they meant something. They weren't just shock value. The Duffers have said the stakes in Season 5 are higher than they've ever been, and that sometimes you have to hurt people to make the danger feel real. So yeah, we're losing somebody. The fan favourite for death predictions is Will Byers, which honestly breaks my heart just thinking about it. The evidence for this one is pretty compelling though. In episode 4, Will tapped into the hive mind connection and borrowed Vecna's powers. He destroyed a group of demogorgons using that same bone-snapping telekinesis, exactly like Vecna's killing technique. That bone-snapping, body-lifting horror. Seeing Will use those powers, looking so much like the monster they've been fighting, was genuinely disturbing. Noah Schnapp himself has speculated about Will's fate in interviews. He's talked about how Will's arc has always been about suffering, about being the victim, and how it would be meaningful for him to go out as a hero instead. There's this narrative symmetry to it. Will was the first one taken by the Upside Down in Season 1. If he's the final sacrifice that closes it forever, that completes the circle in a really tragic way. But here's why I don't think it'll happen. Will just had his coming out scene in episode 7. The Duffers spent years building to that moment, and by all accounts it was beautiful and honest and exactly what the character needed. For Will to finally accept himself, to find that peace and confidence, and then immediately die. That would be unbearably cruel. It would feel like the show is punishing him for being gay, even if that's not the intention. I think Will survives, but he might lose his powers or his connection to the Upside Down. That would be bittersweet enough. 11 is the other big theory, and this one has a lot more weight to it. The setup is definitely there. Her blood is the source of these abilities, and as long as she's alive, the military will keep hunting her, keep trying to replicate her. Kaylee's been pushing the sacrifice angle hard, and there are those leaked photos from the set showing Mike and Hopper together, both looking devastated, with 11 notably absent. Hopper's even wearing his sheriff uniform for the first time in seasons, which feels significant. The idea is that 11 stays behind when the Upside Down collapses, using her powers to seal it shut from the inside. It's the ultimate sacrifice, the girl who started all of this by opening the first gate being the one to close it permanently. Thematically, it works. Emotionally, it would absolutely destroy everyone. But 11 is the heart of this show. She's the character everything revolves around. Killing her feels too devastating, too final. I think there's a chance she loses her powers instead, or she does sacrifice herself, but there's some kind of time travel element that brings her back. Or she survives, but has to go into permanent hiding. Something that costs her everything, but doesn't actually kill her. Maybe. Steve Harrington has a death theory because of that scene in Volume 2, where he nearly died in the upside-down version of Hawkins' lab. Dustin had a complete breakdown, sobbing about how he can't lose Steve after already losing Eddie. They made this pact to die together or not at all, which in TV logic usually means one of them is definitely dying. Steve's been playing the hero, being reckless, throwing himself into danger to protect the kids. That's classic sacrifice setup. Joe Keery, Steve's actor, has definitely hinted at heavy stuff coming, but then Jimmy Fallon basically debunked this theory when Keery was on The Tonight Show, joking about Steve surviving. Plus, killing Steve feels too obvious at this point. Everyone expects it. The Duffers might be subverting that expectation by letting him live. Or they're double bluffing us and he dies anyway. I genuinely don't know. Hopper's got a death theory because the man ran through the Upside Down with a bomb strapped to his chest in Volume 2. That's not subtle foreshadowing. He's also been the protective father figure to 11 this whole time, and there's something narratively satisfying about him giving his life to save hers after everything they've been through. David Harbour has talked about how emotional the final day of filming was, how the whole cast was crying uncontrollably. The fact that Hopper appears in leaked photos wearing his old sheriff uniform has people thinking time travel might be involved, or it's a flashback, or he dies, and we see him in some kind of afterlife or memory. I think Hopper survives, honestly. He's earned his happy ending with Joyce. They've both suffered enough, but I could see him coming very close to death, maybe even being presumed dead before making it out. Dustin is another possibility, mainly because of his connection to Steve and his role as the brain of the group. He's the one who figured out the wormhole, who understands the science. There's precedent for the smart character dying in a heroic sacrifice. Plus, his pact with Steve means one of them is probably in danger. Garton Matarazzo would absolutely break everyone's hearts if Dustin died, but I think he makes it. The show needs someone to narrate the aftermath, and Dustin's the best candidate for that. Max has already died once, technically. Vecna killed her at the end of Season 4, and 11 brought her back, but Max's mind has been trapped in Vecna's mindscape this whole time. She's been hiding in the caves that Vecna fears, learning his weaknesses. There's a theory that Max doesn't actually make it back to her body, that she stays in the mindscape voluntarily, or gets trapped there permanently, or she wakes up just long enough to have a goodbye with Lucas before dying for real. That would be heartbreaking, but also kind of beautiful. She'd get closure with Lucas, they'd get their moment, and then she'd be at peace. Sadie Sink has been incredible this season, and giving Max a peaceful ending after all the trauma she's endured might be the kindest thing the show could do for her character. Then there's the theory that multiple characters die, that Carly and 11 both sacrifice themselves like Carly's been pushing for, that Hopper goes with them, that Steve and Dustin keep their pact and die together, that Jonathan, who's been suspiciously absent from a lot of the finale speculation, doesn't make it. The idea that this is truly a suicide mission and most of the team doesn't come back. I really hope that's not the case. It would be too much. Yes, the stakes are high, yes, people die in wars, but Stranger Things has always been about hope and friendship, and love conquering darkness. A massacre of beloved characters would feel like it's betraying the show's core message. Some people think Eddie might come back, even though he definitively died in Season 4. That's just wishful thinking, honestly. Joseph Quinn was incredible. Everyone loves Eddie, but he's gone. Maybe we'll get a mention of him, a tribute, but he's not coming back. What's most likely, based on everything the Duffers have said and the patterns of previous seasons, is that we lose one or two major characters, and it'll hurt like hell. My best guess? Either Carly dies sacrificing herself for 11, or 11 loses her powers and has to disappear, or Hopper nearly dies, but survives. Someone from the core group, the kids we've watched since Season 1, probably makes it out. All of them might make it out. But the cost will be high in other ways. The Duffers have been pretty good about making deaths mean something. Barb's death mattered because it showed the real consequences. The kids and families destroyed by the Upside Down. Bob died saving everyone he loved. Billy got redemption in his final moments. Eddie died a hero, saving Dustin and the mission. Whoever doesn't survive the finale, it's going to devastate us. The actors have all talked about how emotional the filming was, how they couldn't get through scenes without crying. Finn Wolfhard said the last day was incredibly emotional. Harbour said it was the best episode they've ever made, but also the hardest. That doesn't tell us who dies, but it tells us that whatever happens, it's going to hurt. Not everyone who doesn't get a happy ending necessarily dies. Sometimes the ending is just complicated. We've been talking a lot about death predictions, but there are fates that might be worse than death, or at least stranger. Ways characters' stories could end that don't involve them heroically sacrificing themselves, but also don't give them the peaceful future they deserve. Stranger Things has always been pretty creative with how it handles consequences, so let's explore some of the alternative endings floating around. For 11, There are a bunch of possibilities beyond death or survival. One theory is that she loses her powers permanently, not from overuse, not temporarily, but as the cost of sealing the Upside Down. She burns out her abilities completely, and in doing so, she becomes useless to the military. They can't replicate her powers if she doesn't have them anymore. She gets to live, but she has to rebuild her entire identity around not being special, not being the girl with telekinesis, just being Jane Hopper, normal teenager. That would actually be pretty meaningful. Eleven's whole arc has been about figuring out who she is beyond her powers, beyond being a weapon. Losing her abilities might be the only way she truly gets to be free. She could have a relationship with Mike without the world ending, go to school, have a regular life. It's bittersweet, but it's something. Another possibility is that 11 gets trapped in the Upside Down or the abyss but alive. She's maintaining the seal from the inside, keeping the door closed through sheer force of will. She's conscious, maybe even able to communicate occasionally through the void, but she can't come back. Mike and the others know she's alive, know she's out there, but they can't reach her. That's almost crueler than death, honestly. The hope would kill them. There's also the memory wipe theory. The government catches up to 11 after everything's over, and instead of killing her or imprisoning her, they erase her memories. She doesn't remember Hawkins, doesn't remember Mike, doesn't remember any of it. She gets relocated with a new identity, maybe adopted by a family far away, and she just lives a normal life, with no idea what she sacrificed. Everyone else has to live with the loss of her, but she's safe because she doesn't know what she's lost. It's heartbreaking in a very specific way. And then there's the time loop scenario. If the Upside Down really is a wormhole, and Mr. Clark's lesson about wormholes potentially enabling time travel is relevant, then maybe 11 doesn't die or get trapped. Maybe she goes back to 1983, back to before it all started. Maybe the finale reveals that she's been creating a closed time loop this whole time, that she's the one who ensures events play out the way they need to. It would explain some of the strange timing elements, the way the Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983. For Vecna, death seems like the obvious ending, but there are alternatives. A redemption arc is technically possible, though incredibly unlikely. If the Mind Flayer is revealed as the true villain, if Vecna really was corrupted as a child and never had a choice, then maybe he helps defeat it in his final moments. Maybe he realizes what he's become and makes one last decision as Henry Creel instead of as one. It would be controversial, for sure. A lot of people don't want to see Vecna redeemed after everything he's done. But stranger things have happened. More likely, Vecna gets imprisoned rather than destroyed. Trapped in the abyss permanently, sealed away but still alive, still conscious. A fate worse than death for someone who craves power and control. He'd be aware of his failure forever, unable to do anything about it. There's also the possibility that Vecna becomes part of the Upside Down itself. Not dead, not alive, just absorbed into the fabric of the dimension. A warning, a scar, a memory of what happened. Or the Mind Flayer absorbs him completely, and he ceases to exist as an individual entity. Will's fate, if he survives, could involve him keeping his connection to the Upside Down permanently. Not possessed, but linked. He'd always be able to sense when something's wrong, when a gate might be opening, when danger is coming. He becomes a guardian of sorts, the person who watches the boundary between worlds. It would mean he never fully escapes what happened to him, but it also gives his suffering purpose. Alternatively, Will's hive mind connection remains, but he learns to use it purposefully without being controlled by it. He doesn't become like Vecna. He uses his abilities to help people, maybe works with 11 if she keeps hers, maybe finds a way to use what Vecna forced on him for good. It's the optimistic version. For Max, if she survives and wakes up, she might not be the same. Spending 18 months in Vecna's mindscape, hiding in those caves, witnessing his memories, that changes a person. She might have powers now, some kind of psychic ability from prolonged exposure, or she might have lasting psychological damage that she has to work through. She and Lucas could still have their relationship, but it would be different, harder. They'd have to rebuild. Or Max stays in the mindscape voluntarily. Not trapped, but choosing to stay because she knows something important, because she can monitor Vecna from the inside, because leaving would put others at risk. She becomes a sentinel in the mental realm while her body stays in a coma. Lucas visits her, talks to her, and somewhere in Vecna's fading consciousness, she hears him. The military threat, Dr. K, and the experiments. That's another question entirely. Does the program get shut down? Does someone high up finally realize the danger and pull the plug? Or does K escape and continue the work in secret? The government knowing about the upside down, about powered individuals, that doesn't just go away. Even if Hawkins is saved, there might be consequences rippling out for years. Maybe part of the ending is a cover-up. Official story, gas leak, ecological disaster, something mundane. Hawkins gets rebuilt, people move on, and only a few people know the truth. 11, Mike and the others, have to live with knowing what really happened while the world forgets. They have to pretend it was normal when they know it was anything but. Time travel could explain a lot of the weird elements we've seen. It would explain why Hopper's wearing his sheriff uniform in leaked photos, why the Upside Down is stuck in 1983, why certain events seem destined to happen. If someone goes back and changes things, or ensures things happen a certain way, the whole series could be reframed. Not as a story that already happened, but as a story that's still being written by someone with the ability to move through time. The Duffers have said the ending feels inevitable, which makes me think it's not going to be as simple as good guys win, bad guy dies, everyone goes home. Inevitable suggests consequence, suggests that things had to happen this way, that there was no other choice. That sounds more like complicated endings, bittersweet endings, endings where victory costs something permanent. I think we're looking at a mix. Some characters die, some lose things they can't get back, some are changed forever. The world is saved, but the people who saved it aren't the same people they were when they started. That's what growing up is, really. You can't go back to who you were before, you can only move forward with the scars you've earned. After 5 seasons of calling it the Upside Down, we finally know what it actually is. And somehow, that makes everything more complicated. The revelation came from Dustin in episodes 6 and 7, after he found Dr. Brenner's journals hidden in the upside-down version of Hawkins' lab. Brenner had documented everything, all his theories about dimensional rifts and psychic connections. Dustin pieced it together with the help of those journals and his own understanding of theoretical physics, which is frankly terrifying for a high school kid, but also completely on brand for him. The Upside Down isn't an alternate dimension. It's not a parallel world. It's a wormhole, a bridge connecting 2 points in space, maybe even in time. One end is anchored in Hawkins, specifically in the spot where Hawkins' lab used to be. The other end opens into the abyss, which the Duffers originally called Dimension X in their 25-page mythology document they created for Netflix. The Dimension X name is actually a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reference, which I kind of love. The abyss is the real dimension, that red, hostile, Mars-like hellscape we've seen in flashbacks. It's where the Demogorgons evolved, where the Mind Flayer originated, where all the nightmare creatures call home. And it's where Vecna has been this entire time, building his citadel, gathering his strength, planning the merger that would bring that world crashing into ours. The wormhole itself, the Upside Down as we know it, is basically just a tunnel, the connective tissue, and it's stuck frozen on November 6th, 1983, the exact moment 11 made psychic contact with a Demogorgon while Brenner was forcing her to find it. That contact created the bridge, punched a hole between worlds, and the wormhole stabilized in that configuration. Everything in the Upside Down, all those details, the Wheeler house, the arcade, it's all a snapshot of Hawkins from that specific day. Why it stays frozen is still a bit of a mystery. Dustin theorizes it has something to do with exotic matter, the theoretical substance that would be needed to keep a wormhole stable. There's exotic matter at the core of the wormhole, right where the gate was first opened in Hawkins' lab. That's what Nancy shot with her shotgun in Volume 2, causing her and Jonathan to pass out and get covered in that weird goo. Exotic matter is a real physics concept, or at least a theoretical one. It's the stuff that would theoretically allow wormholes to exist without collapsing. It has negative mass, negative energy density, properties that don't exist in normal matter. The show name drops it, and then immediately gives us visual references to Interstellar and other sci-fi films that have played with the concept. The Duffers are clearly having fun with the theoretical physics. This is where the gang's plan comes in, and honestly, it's desperate. They're going to destroy the exotic matter, plant a bomb right next to it, blow it up, and collapse the wormhole. When the bridge falls, everything connected to it goes too. The upside down ceases to exist. The abyss gets cut off from our world. Vecna, the mind flayer, all the creatures, they're trapped on their side with no way to cross over. In theory, it's brilliant. In practice, it's got about 1 million ways to fail. First, there's the timing issue. Vecna is using those 12 kidnapped children to perform some kind of massive spell. He's possessing them, channeling their combined power to physically merge the abyss with Hawkins. The gang can't get to the abyss to fight him until that merger is almost complete, because the barrier between worlds won't be thin enough for them to cross otherwise, so they have to wait until Vecna's plan is nearly successful before they can even start trying to stop it. That's cutting it really close. They're banking on everything going perfectly. 11 has to get into the bath at the upside-down Hawkins lab, which is directly underneath Vecna's citadel. Max has to successfully guide her through his mindscape without Vecna realizing what they're doing until it's too late. Carly has to actually help instead of sabotaging them. They have to fight Vecna, which has never gone well for anyone. They have to plant the bomb, set the timer, and get everyone out before the whole thing explodes. One thing goes wrong. They all die and the world ends. The exotic matter itself might be more resilient than they're counting on. This is a common sci-fi trope, right? The heroes think they can destroy the power source with one big explosion, but it turns out the power source is way more stable than expected. Dustin figured out that the wormhole has been disrupted before, probably twice based on evidence they found embedded in the white matter at the lab. Each time, it stabilized itself, found a new equilibrium. What if blowing up the exotic matter just causes the wormhole to reorganize? What if it doesn't collapse? It just shifts. They could end up making things worse, opening new gates, creating unstable rifts all over Hawkins instead of one controlled bridge. And Vecna knows they're coming. He's not stupid. He's had months to prepare, to fortify his position, to plan for every possible attack. The gang is walking into his home territory, his citadel, his domain. He has every advantage. Even with 11's power and Max's knowledge and everyone working together, they're outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The physics of it all is fascinating, though. Mr. Clark gave that lesson back in Season 1 about the flea and the acrobat, explaining how if you fold space, you can create a shortcut between two distant points. That analogy is coming back now in a big way. The wormhole is exactly what he described. And his comment about wormholes potentially enabling time travel, that might not have been throwaway dialogue. A Wrinkle in Time keeps getting referenced, especially with Holly naming Vecna's mindscape Kamazots. In that book, the characters use tessering to travel, which is basically wrinkling time and space to move instantaneously across vast distances. If the gang can access the wormhole's properties, if they can manipulate it the way 11's powers manipulate space, then time travel becomes a real possibility. Maybe that's how they fix things. Maybe someone goes back to 1983 and prevents the gate from opening in the first place. Maybe that's why the Upside Down is frozen on that date. It's not stuck randomly. It's stuck because someone from the future is going to go back there and do something crucial. The 12 children Vecna has kidnapped are another complication. They're all young, all innocent, and Vecna is using them as conduits for his spell. What happens to them when the merger attempt fails? Do they wake up, traumatized but alive? Do they die when Vecna is defeated? Are they permanently changed by what he's forced them to channel? The gang's plan doesn't really address the children. They're focused on stopping Vecna and collapsing the wormhole. But those kids are still in his citadel, still under his control. Someone has to get them out. Someone has to make sure they're safe before the bomb goes off. That's extra time they might not have, extra complications in an already impossibly complicated mission. Dustin's the one who came up with the bomb plan, which means he's probably thought through the variables better than anyone. But even Dustin can't account for everything. He's working with incomplete information, theoretical physics that might not apply to magical wormholes, and the assumption that they'll have enough time to execute every step. It's a desperate plan, a crazy plan, the kind of plan you come up with when you're out of options and the world is ending and you just need something, anything, that might work. But it's the only plan they've got. And with 2 hours of runtime in the finale, there's definitely going to be some serious complications nobody saw coming. Now let's talk about that flashback Max and Holly witnessed, because it's clearly going to be crucial, and we still don't know what actually happened. In Volume 2, while Max was guiding Holly through Vecna's mindscape, trying to find his weaknesses, they stumbled into one of his suppressed memories. It was visceral and disturbing, and raised way more questions than it answered. Young Henry Creel, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a Boy Scout uniform, wandering through a cave or mine shaft in the Nevada desert. He's following the sound of someone in distress, someone screaming or crying out in pain. He finds a man. The man is wounded, bleeding, clearly desperate, and he's clutching a metallic briefcase, like his life depends on it. Henry approaches carefully, trying to help, saying he heard the man's anguish and followed it. But the man doesn't want help. He's terrified of Henry, or terrified of what Henry represents, or maybe terrified of what's in the briefcase. The man shoots Henry in the hand. Henry, just a kid at this point, reacts with pure rage and violence. He picks up a rock and bashes the man's head in. It's brutal. It's not defensive. It's not justified. It's murder. And then Henry opens the briefcase. We don't see what's inside because Max pulls Holly away before the memory finishes, sensing they'd seen enough. But whatever was in that case, it changed everything. The Duffer Brothers confirmed in interviews that we will see that briefcase again. We'll get the full memory, the complete picture of what happened in that cave. Ross Duffer specifically said the answers to those questions are coming in the final episode. So this isn't a loose thread. This is a key piece of the puzzle. The connection to Stranger Things. The first shadow is huge here. Most people haven't seen the Broadway play, and honestly, that's a problem because it's apparently essential to understanding Henry's origin. The play reveals that Henry disappeared on his 8th birthday in 1959. He was gone for 12 hours, transported to Dimension X somehow. When he came back, he was different. His blood was altered, his personality was changed. He had psychic powers. Dr. Brenner, who eventually became his keeper after Henry murdered his mother and sister, mentioned finding Henry in a cave in Nevada. This is that cave. This memory is from that day or shortly after. The timeline matches up. The location matches. Everything about it screams origin story. So what are the theories about what was in the briefcase? The most common one is that it contains some kind of stolen government technology. The Cold War was in full swing in 1959. Espionage, secret weapons programs, stolen research, all of that was happening. The wounded man appears to have been a fugitive scientist, possibly one of Dr. Brenner's own scientists who'd stolen classified equipment and was trying to escape with it. The briefcase likely contained technology or research related to dimensional experiments or psychic abilities. If the briefcase contained something related to dimensional research or psychic experimentation, and young Henry opened it, was exposed to it, That could explain how he ended up in Dimension X. Maybe the device activated when he opened it. Maybe it was a prototype portal generator. Maybe it was samples of exotic matter or mind flayer particles that someone had contained. Another theory is that the briefcase contained something from Dimension X itself. Not technology to access it, but something that had already crossed over. A piece of the mind flayer maybe, or some artifact from the abyss. Opening it could have created an instant connection, pulling Henry into that realm and corrupting him in the process. There's also the possibility that the stranger in the cave was someone who knew about Henry's potential. Maybe he was there specifically because of Henry, trying to protect something dangerous from falling into the wrong hands. He saw Henry and realized the danger, shot him in desperation, but it was too late. The cave itself is significant because Vecna is afraid of it. Max discovered that during her time in his mindscape. There are caves in Camazotz where Vecna never goes, places that terrify him. If the Nevada cave is where his humanity died, where he became something other than Henry Creel, then his fear makes perfect sense. It's the place where he lost control, where something else took over. Whatever happened in that cave, it's the linchpin of Vecna's entire existence. It's why he has powers, why he's twisted, why he ended up murdering his family and eventually becoming the monster in the abyss. Understanding that moment is understanding Vecna himself. And Max knows this. She's seen the memory, or at least part of it. She knows about the briefcase, the cave, the fear. In the final battle, when Eleven goes into Vecna's mind with Carly and Max guiding her, they're going to use this knowledge against him. They're going to force him to confront that memory, to face what he's been suppressing. The question is whether it'll be enough. Knowing someone's trauma doesn't automatically give you power over them. Vecna's had decades to bury these memories, to build walls around them. He's not going to crumble just because someone makes him remember his worst day. But if there's something specific about that briefcase, about what it contained or what it did to him, then maybe it's not just about the memory. Maybe it's about undoing whatever happened that day. Whatever was in that briefcase, whatever happened when Henry opened it, it's the key to understanding how Henry became Vecna. And more importantly, it might be the key to stopping him. Let's talk about the actual powers at play here, because there's some interesting math happening. One theory that's been floating around online is the numbers theory. 11 plus Carly, who's number 8, equals 19. Add in Will with his ability to tap into the hive mind and borrow Vecna's powers. And you've got 3 incredibly powerful individuals combining their strengths against one enemy. The question is whether that's enough, whether raw numbers and combined power can overcome Vecna's decades of experience and his connection to the Mind Flayer's hive mind. 11's abilities are the most familiar. Telekinesis strong enough to flip vehicles and collapse buildings. Telepathy that lets her enter people's minds, find them across vast distances, access their memories. Remote viewing, astral projection, psychic combat. She can do things that seem impossible, bend reality with her thoughts, but she has limits. Overuse causes nosebleeds, exhaustion, sometimes unconsciousness. She's powerful, but not invincible, and the military wanting her blood proves her abilities have a biological component that can theoretically be replicated. The threat of weaponizing her DNA adds a layer to this that's genuinely horrifying. Dr. K trying to create a new generation of psychic soldiers means 11's existence is a liability as long as she's alive. Her power makes her valuable, but it also makes her a target that will never stop being hunted. Carly's abilities are different. She creates illusions, makes people see things that aren't there, manipulates perception. It's not telekinesis or mind reading, it's reality distortion. In combat, that's incredibly useful. Make Vecna see threats that don't exist, hide your actual position, create distractions and confusion. But her powers require concentration, require her target to be susceptible to illusion. And we don't fully know her limits yet. There's also this thing about shared consciousness that Carly mentioned in Volume 2. The numbered kids can apparently connect their minds, share thoughts and perceptions. If 11 and Carly can truly link up and combine their abilities, that might create something neither of them could do alone. Psychic teamwork on a level we haven't seen yet. Will's borrowed abilities are the wild card. He destroyed Demogorgons in Episode 4 by channeling Vecna's powers through the hive mind connection. That bone-breaking, body-lifting horror. It's not Will's own ability. He's tapping into Vecna's strength when he's close enough to the hive mind. The fact that Will can access that kind of power is both terrifying and useful. He's got raw destructive capability available to him, but he's also inexperienced, untrained, and emotionally vulnerable. Using powers that literally come from Vecna could mess with his head, make him question whether he's becoming like the monster who tormented him, or whether he can even separate himself from that connection anymore. Will's connection to the hive mind is still active too. He can sense when upside-down creatures are near, feel when they're in pain, detect shifts in the dimensional barrier. That makes him an early warning system, but it also makes him a potential vulnerability. If Vecna can access that connection, use it against him, Will could become compromised without even realizing it. Then there's Vecna himself. Supreme telekinesis, stronger than 11's ever been. Mind control that can possess multiple people simultaneously. His curse technique that kills by breaking bones and destroying minds. He commands the hive mind, controls armies of creatures, has decades of experience using his abilities in ways that would never occur to the kids. And he's augmented by the abyss itself, drawing power from that realm in ways we don't fully understand. But Vecna has vulnerabilities. Max observed that he's still human, still afraid. The cave memory proves he has trauma he hasn't processed, weaknesses buried in his past. He's arrogant, convinced of his superiority, which means he might underestimate the gang. And if the Mind Flayer is actually controlling him rather than the other way around, then he's got internal conflicts that could be exploited. The Mind Flayer's power level is the big unknown. We've seen what it can do through possession, through the hive mind, through physical manifestation. In Season 3, the meat flayer it created from melted human bodies was massive and nearly unstoppable. But that was just a fragment using a fraction of its strength. If the Mind Flayer appears in full force, if it's been conserving power this whole time, it could be stronger than anything we've seen. The teamwork factor matters more than individual strength, honestly. 11 couldn't beat Vecna alone in Season 4. She barely survived that confrontation. But 11 with Max guiding her through his mind, with Carly creating diversions, with Will sensing the hive mind's movements, with everyone else providing support and covering vulnerabilities. That's a different equation. We've seen this group work together before. In Season 1, they defeated the Demogorgon through coordination and sacrifice. In Season 2, they closed the gate by combining 11's power with everyone else's efforts to distract the Mind Flayer. In Season 3, they destroyed the Meat Flayer through teamwork and improvisation. Every major victory has come from working together, not from one person being strong enough to win alone. Vecna's overconfidence might be his biggest weakness. He sees himself as a god, as someone who's transcended humanity. He doesn't value connection, doesn't understand the strength that comes from caring about others. That blind spot could be fatal. While he's focused on 11 as the primary threat, everyone else might be finding ways to undercut him, to exploit the weaknesses Max discovered, to use his own trauma against him. The historical pattern suggests the kids will find a way to win. They always do, but the cost keeps getting higher. Season 1 cost them Barb and their innocence. Season 2 cost Bob. Season 3 cost Billy and Hopper, or at least they thought it did. Season 4 cost Max's life, even if 11 brought her back. Season 5 is going to cost something major. Power-wise, they've got a shot. Numbers-wise, the math works out. But this isn't just about who's stronger. It's about who's willing to sacrifice more, who's smarter, who can exploit the other's weaknesses first. And in that game, with stakes this high, anything could happen. Okay, so we've talked about death and cosmic horror. Now let's talk about the stuff that's actually going to make us cry. Because yeah, the monster fights and the interdimensional warfare are intense, but that's not what's going to destroy us emotionally. It's going to be the quiet moments, the conversations, the goodbyes, the relationships that have been building for 9 years finally getting their resolution, for better or worse. Mike and Eleven have been the emotional centre of this show since the beginning. Their relationship has survived literal dimensions separating them, government conspiracies, relocations across the country, and the constant threat of world-ending catastrophe. They've said goodbye so many times, had so many tearful reunions, made so many promises to each other, and now we're heading into a finale where Eleven might not make it back. That conversation they're going to have, if they get one, is going to be devastating. Mike spent the entire series terrified of losing her. Every time she's gone, he falls apart. If this is the real goodbye, if she tells him she's staying behind to seal the upside down, I don't know how either of them gets through that scene. I don't know how we get through watching it. Hopper has this message in the trailer, telling everyone he needs them to fight one last time. His voice is wrecked, emotional, desperate. That's Hopper as a father, as a leader, as someone who's already lost one daughter and can't bear to lose another. If he's saying goodbye to Eleven in that moment, if he's preparing her for sacrifice, that's going to hit harder than any death scene possibly could. Will's journey this season has been about finally accepting himself. His coming out scene in episode 7 was apparently beautiful, honest, everything it should have been. The Duffers spent years building to that moment, and Noah Schnapp has talked about how much it meant to him and to the character. Will finding peace with who he is, finding the confidence to be himself, that's huge. But now he's going into this final battle, right after achieving that acceptance. He's finally okay with himself, finally ready to move forward, and there's a very real chance he doesn't survive. Even if he does survive, even if the death theories are wrong, Will's going to be changed by this. His new powers, his connection to the hive mind, the trauma of everything he's endured. He might get to live, but whether he gets to be happy is another question entirely. The original 4, Mike, Lucas, Dustin and Will, started this whole thing playing Dungeons and Dragons in a basement. They were kids. They had no idea what they were getting into, no concept of the nightmare that was about to consume their lives. If the finale gives us one last D&D session, one last campaign where they're just friends playing a game together, that callback is going to wreck me. Because we'll know it's the last time. We'll know childhood is over. Steve and Dustin's relationship has become one of the show's best. The unlikely friendship between the popular kid and the nerdy kid, evolving into genuine brotherhood. Steve's the big brother Dustin never had. Dustin's the little brother Steve chose. Their pact to die together or not at all isn't just about survival. It's about refusing to lose each other the way they lost Eddie. That scene in Volume 2 where Dustin broke down crying, telling Steve he can't lose him, that was Garten Matarazzo putting everything into it. And if they have another moment like that in the finale, if one of them is dying or thinks the other is dead, the emotional devastation is going to be unreal. Hopper and Joyce finally got their reunion after Russia, after all the separation and pain and thinking each other was dead. They're building a life together, trying to create something normal out of the wreckage. If the finale takes that away from them, if Hopper dies protecting Eleven or Joyce dies in the battle, it would be unbearably cruel. They've earned their happy ending. Both of them have suffered enough. But this is Stranger Things. Suffering is kind of the point. Nancy's been torn between Jonathan and Steve for seasons now, and honestly, I think the most satisfying ending for her is choosing neither. She's got ambitions, dreams of being a journalist, a career that matters to her more than any relationship. If the finale lets Nancy choose herself, choose her future over romance, that would be perfect for her character. She doesn't need to end up with someone to have a complete arc. Max and Lucas, though, they deserve something good. Max has been through absolute hell. Vecna killed her, 11 brought her back, and she spent 18 months trapped in a nightmare mindscape. If she wakes up, if she makes it back to her body and gets to see Lucas again, that reunion needs to happen. Just a moment where they're together, where Lucas tells her he never stopped visiting her at the hospital, where she tells him she heard him the whole time. Let them have that. The found family aspect of this show is what makes it work. These characters aren't just friends or allies, they're family, chosen family, the kind you build when blood relatives fail you, or when circumstances throw you together and you realise you die for each other. Hopper and 11, Steve and Dustin, the entire party, Joyce and her boys, everyone who's fought together and bled together and survived together. If the finale gives us a moment where they all come together, where the found family acknowledges what they mean to each other before the final battle, I'm going to be a mess. Just everyone hugging, everyone saying what needs to be said, everyone making peace with the possibility that this is goodbye. The actors have all talked about how emotional the final days of filming were. Finn Wolfhard said it was incredibly emotional, that everyone was crying. David Harbour said the cast cried uncontrollably during certain scenes, that it was the best episode they've ever made, but also the hardest. The way they talk about it sounds like the emotional weight was almost unbearable. That doesn't tell us specifically what happens, but it tells us that whatever these characters go through, whatever goodbyes they have to say, it destroyed the actors playing them. They've lived with these characters for 9 years. They've grown up together, literally in the case of the younger cast. Saying goodbye to that, to the show, and to each other, and to the characters, that's not something you can fake. The Duffers studied finales like 6 Feet Under and Friday Night Lights. Both of those shows had endings that emotionally devastated their audiences in the best possible way. 6 Feet Under's finale is still considered one of the greatest ever made, and it works because it earns its emotional moments through years of character development. Friday Night Lights ended with bittersweet goodbyes and new beginnings, honouring what came before while acknowledging that life moves on. If Stranger Things can stick that landing, if it can give us emotional payoffs that feel earned and true to the characters, then the heartbreak will be worth it. It'll hurt, but it'll hurt in a way that feels meaningful. So let's talk about what I'm actually hoping to see beyond just everyone surviving, which feels like a pipe dream at this point. Because yes, we've spent a lot of time discussing death and trauma and devastating goodbyes, but there are moments I'm genuinely excited about. Things that would make this finale not just emotionally satisfying, but genuinely epic. Stranger Things has always been good at delivering those big, crowd-pleasing moments alongside the heartbreak, and the finale needs to have some of that energy too. The music moment is at the top of my list. The Duffers specifically said in interviews that there's a pivotal song in the finale, something that's never been on a TV show before. They mentioned that because of the Kate Bush precedent with Running Up That Hill in Season 4, they were able to get the rights to this song. Under normal circumstances, the artist wouldn't have allowed it. That's huge. Season 4's use of Running Up That Hill was perfect. It was emotional, it was iconic, it saved Max's life and became this massive cultural moment. The song charts went crazy. A whole new generation discovered Kate Bush, and it's now impossible to hear that song without thinking of Max running from Vecna. Whatever song they've chosen for the finale has those same expectations on it. My guess is it'll play during a sacrifice scene. Either 11 staying behind, or Carly and 11 together, or whoever doesn't make it out. The Duffers love using music to heighten emotional devastation, and if they've got a never-before licensed track for this moment, they're going to use it to destroy us. I'm talking full ugly, crying, can't breathe emotional destruction. They wouldn't hype it up this much if it wasn't going to be absolutely devastating. Character badass moments are another thing I'm hoping for. Karen Wheeler finally getting to be part of the action. We've seen glimpses of her being more aware, more involved, and Cara Buono has talked about Karen having a hero moment this season. Let her be fierce. Let her protect her kids with the same intensity we've seen from Joyce. She's earned it. Steve and Nancy fighting together one last time would be perfect. They've got chemistry, even if they're not romantically involved anymore. And seeing them team up, having each other's backs the way they did in previous seasons, that's the kind of callback that works. Steve with his nail bat, Nancy with her shotgun, just absolutely wrecking upside-down creatures side by side. Dustin needs a moment where his intelligence saves everyone. He's been the brain of the operation since season 1, figuring out the science, making the connections no one else sees. The finale needs to give him a moment where everyone realizes they'd be dead without him. Maybe he's the one who figures out the timing on the bomb, or realizes a flaw in the plan that would have killed them all, or MacGyver's some solution in the middle of chaos. Lucas protecting Max, even if she's still in the mindscape, even if her body is vulnerable somewhere. We've seen Lucas grow from the skeptical kid in season 1 to someone who'd do anything for the people he loves. Give him a moment of absolute determination, of refusing to let anything hurt her. Robin and Vicky getting a real moment together would be nice. Not necessarily romantic, just acknowledgement of their connection. Robin's been anxious and awkward about it all season, and if the finale lets her just be honest and genuine, without the anxiety winning, that would be satisfying. Erica being Erica. She's the youngest but also the most fearless. Whatever sarcastic, brave, absolutely Erica thing she does in the finale, I'm here for it. For mythology payoffs, I want to see the Mind Flayer, not just mentioned, not just implied, actually appearing in its full terrifying glory. If it's been hiding this whole time, if it shows up after Vecna's defeated and everyone thinks they've won, that reveal needs to be spectacular. Massive, horrifying, the true final boss energy. The Dimension X explanation needs to be shown, not just told. We've gotten a lot of exposition about the abyss and the wormhole, but actually seeing young Henry's journey into that realm, seeing what he encountered, seeing the moment the Mind Flayer corrupted him, that would tie everything together. The first Shadow gave us some of this, but most people haven't seen the play. The show needs to give us those answers directly. The Upside Down's creation would be incredible to witness. If there's time travel involved, if someone goes back to November 6th, 1983, and we see 11 make contact with the Demogorgon from a different perspective, understanding now what that moment actually meant, that would recontextualize the entire series. Full circle moments are what I'm really hoping for. Going back to the Wheeler basement where it all started, a D&D metaphor that completes the game they started in season 1. Someone saying, friends don't lie in a moment where it really matters. A reference to Castle Byers, to Will's art, to the things that represented safety and childhood before everything went wrong. The original Demogorgon got this whole thing started. If there's a parallel, a callback to that first monster and how terrified everyone was, contrasted with how far they've all come, that would be powerful. They've fought so many creatures since then, gained so much experience, but remembering where it began puts everything in perspective. The spin-off hint is going to be fun to hunt for. The Duffers confirmed there's one small scene in the finale that gives a clue about what the spin-off will be. It'll probably be subtle, easy to miss on first watch. A newspaper headline in the background, a radio broadcast, a conversation that seems throwaway but actually reveals the era or location or concept. Fan theories about the spin-off are all over the place. Some think it's set in the 1960s following Henry's childhood. Others think 1970s with different lab experiments. There's speculation about a 1990s setting, post-Hawkins, dealing with the aftermath and new threats. Honestly, it could be anything. The Duffers have said it's a different decade with different characters, but still connected to the Stranger Things universe. Whatever the Easter egg is, Reddit's going to find it within hours of the finale dropping. Someone will screenshot it, post it with red circles and arrows, and then everyone will go back and rewatch just to catch it. Hopper's speech from the trailer, the "I need you to fight one last time" moment, that's going to hit hard. David Harbour's voice in that line sounds wrecked, desperate, emotional. Whether he's talking to 11 specifically or addressing everyone, it's clearly a rallying moment before the final push. Hopper is a leader, as a father figure, giving one last inspirational speech before potential death. Yeah, that's going to destroy me. 11 having one final power moment, going full strength one last time, that's essential. She's been the powerhouse since the beginning. If this is truly the end, she needs a moment where she surpasses everything she's done before. Where she's stronger than Vecna, stronger than anyone expected, because she's fighting not just for survival, but for everyone she loves. A bitchin' callback would be perfect. That was Max's word for 11 in Season 2, and it became this touchstone for their friendship. If Max is the one guiding 11 through Vecna's mind, if she tells 11 she's bitchin' one more time in a moment of triumph, that's the kind of small character moment that makes finales work. Look, I know I'm setting myself up for disappointment with some of these. The finale can't possibly include everything everyone wants, but that's the fun of it, right? The anticipation, the hope, the what-ifs. In a few days we'll know what actually happens, and some of these will hit and some won't, and that's okay. The Duffers have earned enough trust over 9 years that I believe they'll deliver at least a few of these moments, and the ones they don't hit, well, that's what fan fiction is for. Now, I'm not saying these theories are likely. In fact, most of them are absolutely bonkers. But people are theorizing them, and honestly, some of them would be kind of amazing. The internet has produced some wild takes on how Stranger Things might end, and while the vast majority are definitely not happening, they're entertaining to think about. The Duffers have said repeatedly that they're not interested in being too clever, that they want an ending that feels true to the show, rather than some twist for the sake of twisting. But that hasn't stopped fans from coming up with increasingly elaborate possibilities. The D&D game theory is probably the most persistent one. The idea is that nothing we've seen is actually real. The entire series, all 5 seasons, all the trauma and death and interdimensional horror, it's all just the kids playing Dungeons and Dragons in Mike's basement. The Upside Down is their campaign. The monsters are from their imagination, and the finale will pull back to reveal them sitting around the table, having just finished an epic multi-year game. This theory has been around since Season 1. People point to how much the show references D&D, how the monsters are named after D&D creatures, how the kids use campaign strategies to fight real threats. The symmetry of starting and ending with a game appeals to some people, but the Duffers have explicitly said they're not doing a "it was all a dream" or "it was all a game" ending. They've called those kinds of twists cheap and unsatisfying. Ross Duffer specifically mentioned that they studied finales that failed, and most of those failures came from trying to be too clever instead of staying true to the story. So yeah, this isn't happening. The everyone's been dead since Season 1 theory is even darker. The idea that when the Demogorgon took Will, everyone actually died. The Upside Down is purgatory or some kind of afterlife, and the entire series has been them working through their deaths, fighting to move on. Each season represents a different stage of acceptance or denial. It's bleak as hell, and it would recontextualize everything in a way that I don't think anyone actually wants. Also, it doesn't make sense with the show's themes. Stranger Things is about hope, about fighting darkness, about love and friendship, conquering evil. Making it all about death and purgatory undermines everything the show has built. Time loop theory has more credibility, mainly because of the wormhole reveal and Mr. Clark's time travel comments. The idea is that the finale creates Season 1. Someone, probably 11, goes back to 1983 and does something that ensures events play out the way they need to. Maybe she's the one who makes sure she opens the gate, or makes sure Will gets taken, creating a closed loop where the ending enables the beginning. This one's actually possible. The show has referenced Back to the Future constantly. There's been heavy A wrinkle in time symbolism, and the physics of wormholes enabling time travel has been discussed. Plus, it would explain why the Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983. Not because that's when it was created, but because that's when someone from the future anchored it. I still don't think it's likely, though. Time travel gets messy. Paradoxes, butterfly effects, questions about free will and destiny. The Duffers would need to execute it perfectly for it to work, and with everything else they need to resolve, adding time travel complexity seems like too much. Vecna redemption arc is a theory some people desperately want. The idea that Henry Creel was corrupted as a child by the Mind Flayer, that he never had a real choice, that deep down he's still human enough to be saved. In this version, he helps defeat the Mind Flayer in his final moments, sacrificing himself to destroy the true evil. To be fair, there is evidence for Henry being corrupted rather than inherently evil. The first shadow shows the Mind Flayer influencing him as a kid. The briefcase memory suggests trauma we don't fully understand yet. Max observed that Vecna's still afraid, still human in some ways, but redemption, after everything he's done, after the murders, the possessions, the psychological torture, killing Max. I don't see it. Even if he was corrupted, he's had decades to resist and chose not to. He's murdered countless people. Redemption would feel like the show excusing all of that, and I don't think the Duffers would go there. The will is the Mind Flayer theory is wild, but has been gaining traction since Volume 2. The possession, in Season 2, never fully left. It's been dormant, waiting, and Will is actually the Mind Flayer's vessel. When Holly escaped Vecna's citadel, and that black smoke came out, that was Will's connection activating. In the finale, Will betrays everyone, revealing he's been compromised this whole time. It would be the ultimate betrayal. Will, the original victim, the kid everyone's been protecting, turning out to be the real threat. Noah Schnapp could absolutely play that twist. The devastation on everyone's faces when they realise would be horrific, but it contradicts Will's character arc. His whole journey has been about reclaiming himself, about not being defined by what was done to him. Making him the villain undoes all of that. Plus, it would be too cruel after his coming out scene. The show finally letting Will be himself, and then immediately making him evil? No. There's a theory that everyone gets powers from prolonged exposure to the Upside Down. The whole party develops abilities. Mike gets telekinesis, Lucas gets enhanced perception, Dustin gets technopathy or something. They all become super and fight alongside 11 as equals. It's wish fulfillment, basically. Fans wanting their favourite characters to be special in that specific way. And while it would be cool in a comic book sense, it doesn't fit Stranger Things. The show has always been about normal people facing extraordinary circumstances. Giving everyone powers removes that dynamic. Hopper being dead since Season 3 and Russia being a dying hallucination is another grim one. The idea that he never actually survived the explosion, and everything we've seen with him in Russia and back in Hawkins has been some kind of dream state as his consciousness fades. This is just depressing and pointless. We've had 2 full seasons of Hopper being very much alive and active. Revealing it was all hallucination would invalidate all of that character development and make the audience feel cheated, not happening. The music creates or destroys everything. Theory suggests that sound frequency is the key. Running up that hill saved Max by disrupting Vecna's frequency. The final song will either create the Upside Down or destroy it through some kind of sonic resonance. It's too simple, too convenient, and reduces everything to a gimmick. Are any of these happening? Almost definitely not. The Duffers aren't going for shock value twists. They're not trying to trick us or pull the rug out. They've been building toward this ending for 9 years, and they've said it feels inevitable, not clever. But the fact that people are this invested, that we're all going this wild with speculation, that's what makes a good finale worth waiting for. Even the bonkers theories come from a place of love for the show and these characters. The Duffers have confirmed there's a hidden scene in the finale that hints at the spin-off. And of course, everyone's trying to figure out what that could possibly be. Ross Duffer literally said, "There's one small scene in the finale that gives a hint as to what the spin-off will be. We'll see if people pick up on it." And then Matt cut in with, "Why are you giving people that?" which is hilarious and also confirms they're absolutely hiding something in plain sight. Here's what we actually know about the spin-off. It's set in a different decade than the 1980s. It features different characters, not the main Hawkins crew. It's still connected to the Stranger Things universe, still dealing with the same mythology and supernatural elements, but the Duffers have said it sits at a deliberate distance from the original series. They won't be showrunning it themselves, but they'll be heavily involved in development. The decade is the biggest question. Theories are all over the place. A 1960s setting makes sense if they want to explore Henry Creel's childhood more deeply. The Nevada incident happened in 1959, and we know from the first shadow that Henry's early years were crucial to everything that came after. A spin-off following young Henry, or other kids affected by early dimensional research, or the government programs that eventually led to Hawkins' lab. That could work. It would be a prequel, showing the origins of the nightmare. The advantage of a 60s setting is that it's far enough removed from the main series that it feels fresh, but close enough that the aesthetic and technology level aren't completely different. You'd still have that mid-century government conspiracy vibe, Cold War paranoia, secret experiments. It's a natural fit. The 1970s is another strong possibility. That's the decade between Henry becoming 1 and 11 being born. We know Brenner was running experiments throughout that period, that there were other numbered children before 11. Kaoli escaped during this era. A spin-off following different numbers, different experiments, in a different location. Maybe even showing Brenner's earlier work that would fill in gaps without retreading the main series. There's also room in the 70s for entirely new threats, different dimensional rifts, different monsters, different kids with different abilities. You could keep the conspiracy and government experimentation angle while telling a completely separate story. The 1990s theory is interesting because it would be post-Hawkins. After the events of Season 5, after the Upside Down is presumably sealed, what happens next? Does the world move on? Do new gates open? Is there a next generation dealing with the legacy of what happened? The 90s setting would allow for technology advancement, different cultural touchstones, and the question of whether the nightmare is really over or just dormant. It's less likely, though. The Duffers have been pretty clear that the Hawkins story is done, that the Upside Down story is complete. A 90s spin-off continuing that exact narrative might feel like they're backtracking on the finality of the ending. Some people think it could be even further in the future. 2000s, 2010s, modern day. A contemporary setting where the events of Stranger Things are myth and legend, where people who lived through it are old or dead, but the supernatural threats are returning. That would be the most different from the original series, which could be good or bad, depending on execution. The Easter egg itself is probably going to be subtle. The Duffers love hiding things in the background. It could be a newspaper visible for 2 seconds in an epilogue scene, with a headline referencing an incident in a different state or country. It could be a radio broadcast mentioning something that sounds mundane but isn't. It could be a character making an offhand comment about their cousin or sibling or friend in another town dealing with weird stuff. It might be a specific date shown on screen, or a location name, or someone wearing a t-shirt or jacket with a logo that hints at the spin-off setting. The Duffers are good at this. They hid Vecna clues in Season 4's early episodes that nobody caught until the reveal. Reddit's going to go insane trying to find it. Someone will watch the finale frame by frame, catalogue every background detail, cross-reference everything against the Duffers' interviews. Within hours of the finale dropping, there will be spreadsheets and theories and people convinced they've found it. What would actually make a good spin-off? Personally, I'd love something that explores the mythology from a completely different angle. Not more lab kids, not more government experiments, but maybe other countries dealing with dimensional threats, or earlier incidents in history, or the supernatural elements that existed before anyone was experimenting with them. The animated series, Stranger Things, Tales from '85, is set during the winter after Season 2. Different characters, same Hawkins universe, but focused on smaller stories within the existing timeline. That's one approach to expanding the universe without diluting the main story. The live-action spin-off needs to justify its existence beyond just more Stranger Things. It needs to add something new, explore territory the original series couldn't or didn't. Otherwise, it's just cashing in on nostalgia. Whatever the hint is in the finale, it's going to be our first real clue about the direction they're taking. And honestly, I'm curious. Stranger Things has built a rich mythology, a compelling world. There are stories to tell within that framework. The question is whether they can capture the magic that made the original work without just repeating the same formula. We'll know soon enough. Somewhere in that 2-hour finale, hidden in a corner or a background detail or a throwaway line, there's a clue to what comes next. And then the real hunt begins. Look, with 2 hours left and this many characters, something's probably not getting the closure it deserves. Let's talk about what might get left hanging. Because realistically, the finale has a lot to accomplish. Final battle with Vecna, potential Mind Flayer appearance, character deaths or sacrifices, emotional goodbyes, resolution of the main plot, an epilogue showing what happens after, and that spin-off hint hidden somewhere. That's already pushing the limits of what you can fit in a feature-length episode. So yeah, some threads are going to remain loose. The biggest question that might not get fully answered is why the Upside Down is permanently stuck on November 6th, 1983. We know it's frozen on that date. We know that's when 11 opened the gate. But why doesn't it update? Why is it locked in that specific moment? Dustin's exotic matter theory explains how the wormhole stays stable, but not why it captured that exact snapshot and nothing after. If there's time travel involved, that might explain it. Someone went back and anchored it there deliberately. But if there's no time travel, if that's just a weird property of how the gate formed, we might never get a full explanation. And honestly, some mystery is fine. Not everything needs to be spelled out. Terry Ives, Eleven's biological mother, has been in a catatonic state since Brenner's experiments broke her mind. We saw her in earlier seasons, saw the tragedy of what was done to her, but there's been no mention of her in season 5. Does 11 ever get closure with her mother? Does Terry ever wake up? Or is that just one of many casualties that don't get addressed because there's no time? The full truth about Brenner's legacy is another one. We know he's dead, killed by Demogorgons in season 4, but his work lives on through Dr. K and whoever else has access to his research. The extent of his experiments, how many children he damaged, what other programs might still be running. That's a lot to unpack, and probably too much for the finale to handle, while also dealing with the main plot. Other countries' supernatural programs are barely touched on. The Russians had their own research, their own attempts to open gates and harness the Upside Down. But Russia's not the only country that would be interested in this. Where are the Chinese, the British? The Americans might have Hawkins' lab, but someone else somewhere has probably stumbled onto similar phenomena. That's world building that's interesting, but not essential to the main story. The rest of the Mind Flayer, if it's not the big final boss, where is it? We've seen fragments, pieces used by Vecna, but Dustin said it originated in the Abyss. If the Abyss gets sealed off and we never see the full Mind Flayer, is it just stuck on the other side? Still alive? Still dangerous? Just separated from our world? That feels like an important question that Goo, Nancy and Jonathan encountered in the Upside Down Hawkins lab, the stuff that solidified at table level when they were talking about their relationship. What was that? Was it just atmospheric weirdness? Was it exotic matter reacting to their emotions? It seemed significant in the moment, but might just be one of those strange upside-down properties that never gets explained. For character threads, Murray's fate is up in the air. He's been with Hopper and Joyce in Russia and Hawkins, providing comic relief and unexpected competence. Does he get a proper ending? Does he survive? Or is he just there in the background, and we don't find out what happens to him after? Yuri and Dmitri, the Russians who helped Hopper escape, they got brought back to America with the group. Do they get to stay? Do they go back? Does Dmitri reunite with his family? These are minor characters in the grand scheme, but they're still people whose fates matter. Susie, Dustin's girlfriend, has been helping from Utah with tech support and hacking. Does she come to Hawkins? Does she get to meet everyone in person? Or does she just stay on comms and we never see that reunion? Argyle, Jonathan's stoner friend from California, he was part of the crew in Season 4. Is he in the finale at all? Or did he go back to California and we just don't address it? Mr. Clark, the science teacher who's been explaining concepts since Season 1, does he get any acknowledgement? He's been instrumental in helping the kids understand the science behind the supernatural. A scene where they thank him, or where he realises what his lessons were actually being used for, would be nice but probably won't happen. The actual rules of the upside-down physics might stay mysterious. How exactly does the hive mind work on a biological level? Can people besides 11 close gates? What are Vecna's actual limitations beyond the trauma Max discovered? Demogorgon life cycles, how they reproduce and develop. That's interesting but not crucial. Relationship closure for some pairings might be minimal. Karen and Ted Wheeler's marriage has been strained for seasons. Does that get addressed? Probably not. Nancy's journalism dreams, whether she actually pursues that career, we might get a hint in an epilogue, but not a full arc. Robin and Vicky's relationship might get one nice moment, but not a complete storyline. Lucas and basketball, whether he stays on the team or quits to focus on his friends. That's character stuff that might just be implied rather than shown. Dustin and Susie's long-distance relationship, whether they make it work, same deal. Hawkins itself as a town, how does it recover from everything? The earthquakes from Vecna's attacks, the deaths, the people who know too much, the government cover-up that's probably coming. The finale might show us a glimpse of the town rebuilding, but the full extent of how Hawkins moves forward is probably beyond the scope, the cover story for everything. What does the government tell people? What's the official explanation for years of strange deaths and disappearances and dimensional rifts? Do people believe it? Or is Hawkins just known as a cursed town and everyone quietly accepts the weirdness? To be honest, not everything getting answered is fine. Sometimes mystery is better than over-explanation. The original Star Wars trilogy didn't explain every detail of the Force or the Empire's history, and it worked because the core story was strong. Stranger Things has built a compelling world, and leaving some questions open for interpretation isn't a failure. What matters is that the main story gets resolved. Vecna's defeated or dealt with, the upside-down threat is ended, the core characters get meaningful closure. Everything else is bonus. And honestly, if they try to answer every single question and tie up every thread, the finale would feel overstuffed and rushed. Better to nail the important stuff and leave some mysteries than to try to do everything and do none of it well. All right, cards on the table. Here's what I think is actually going to happen. And if I'm completely wrong, you can all laugh at me on December 31st. Based on everything we've seen in Volumes 1 and 2, all the setup and foreshadowing and actor interviews, here are my committed predictions for what goes down in the finale. Carly and Eleven sacrifice themselves together. This feels inevitable at this point. Carly's been pushing the sacrifice narrative all season, and while I don't fully trust her motivations, the logic is sound. As long as Eleven's alive, the military will hunt her. The only way to truly end the cycle is for both of them to stay behind when the Upside Down collapses. They seal it from the inside, using their combined powers to keep the door shut permanently. It's tragic, it's heroic, and it fits the Duffer's pattern of bittersweet endings. The Mind Flayer appears as the true final boss after Vecna's defeated. I think the gang succeeds in taking down Vecna using Max's knowledge of his weaknesses and the briefcase memory trauma. They think they've won. And then the Mind Flayer reveals itself, either absorbing what's left of Vecna or emerging now that its puppet is gone. That would be the oh shit moment, the twist that raises the stakes even higher in the finale's last act. Will survives, but loses his hive mind connection and the ability to borrow Vecna's powers. His arc completes with him finally being free of the nightmare that's defined him since he was 12. He gets to move forward as just Will, not Will the victim or Will the connected one. He keeps the growth and confidence from his coming out, but the supernatural burden is lifted. Steve and Dustin both make it out alive. The death pact was a fake out. They have a close call. Maybe one of them is presumed dead for a moment, but they both survive. Their brotherhood continues, and Dustin doesn't have to lose another person he loves. Max wakes up. She makes it back from the mindscape, reunites with Lucas, and they get their moment. It won't be easy. She'll have trauma to work through, but she survives and gets a chance at healing. Hopper survives and gets his happy ending with Joyce. They've both suffered enough. The sheriff uniform in the leaked photos is from a flashback or time jump epilogue, showing him back in his role, protecting Hawkins in the aftermath. Mike and Eleven are separated permanently. Not by death necessarily, but by circumstance. Maybe Eleven has to stay in hiding, powerless but safe. Maybe there's dimensional separation. Maybe she chooses to disappear to protect him. They love each other, but they don't get to be together. It's heartbreaking but meaningful. There's a time jump epilogue showing everyone years later. We see who stayed in Hawkins, who left, who moved on, who couldn't. It gives closure without being too neat. The spin-off hint is a background detail in the epilogue. A newspaper, a news broadcast, something subtle that most people will miss on first watch. The upside down gets sealed permanently, but the scars remain. Hawkins is changed forever. The people who lived through it carry the weight. Victory has a cost. For emotional beats, I'm expecting tearful goodbyes before the final battle. A group moment where everyone acknowledges they might not make it back. Hopper giving his speech about fighting one last time. Mike finally being honest with Will about their friendship and what it means. Lucas staying with Max's body, talking to her, refusing to leave. Dustin crying over Steve again, but this time Steve survives and they get to process the fear together. The music moment destroys us during the sacrifice scene. Whatever never-before licensed song they've chosen, it plays while Eleven and Carly stay behind, and we're all sobbing. What I don't think happens. Everyone dying. Complete happy endings for everyone. Vecna redemption. Will's death after his coming out. The it was all a game twist, or time travel as the main resolution. My confidence levels? 80% on the 11 Carly sacrifice. 70% on Mind Flayer appearance. 60% on the time jump epilogue. 90% on the upside down being sealed. 50-50 on specific relationship outcomes, because those are harder to predict. I could be completely wrong about all of this. The Duffers have surprised us before, but based on patterns from previous seasons, the themes they've built, and what actors have said about the emotional weight of filming, this feels like the direction they're heading. Ask me again in 2 days and I'll probably have changed my mind on half of it. That's the fun of predictions. You commit, you wait, you find out if you were right or hilariously off base. Why does this ending feel so important? Why are we all this stressed about how a Netflix show concludes? It's been 9 years. That's not just a long time for a TV show. That's a significant chunk of life. People who started watching Stranger Things as teenagers are adults now. Kids who watched with their parents in 2016 are in high school. The actors themselves grew up on screen. We've watched Finn Wolfhard and Millie Bobby Brown go from actual children to young adults, navigating careers and relationships, and everything that comes with growing up in the public eye. Stranger Things captured something specific about its moment. It premiered in 2016, right when nostalgia for the 80s was peaking, when peak TV was giving creators freedom to tell ambitious stories, when Netflix was still figuring out how to dominate the streaming landscape. The show became a cultural phenomenon, not just popular, but genuinely influential. It brought back Kate Bush, made Dungeons and Dragons cool again, created Halloween costumes and memes and a shared vocabulary. Multiple generations watched it together. Parents who lived through the 80s got to share that nostalgia, with kids experiencing it fresh. The soundtrack introduced younger audiences to music their parents grew up with. The Spielberg influences, the Stephen King vibes, the John Carpenter aesthetic, all of it created this bridge between decades. We grew up with these characters. Not literally, obviously, but emotionally. We watched Will go from a scared kid to someone finding his identity. We saw Eleven learn what it meant to be human, to have friends and family and choices. Mike, Lucas, Dustin, they went from D and D-obsessed kids to teenagers dealing with relationships and responsibility and the reality that childhood doesn't last forever. The found family theme hit different for a lot of people. Hopper and Eleven's father-daughter relationship, Steve becoming the group's babysitter and big brother, Joyce fighting for her kids against impossible odds. For people who didn't have great families, for people who found their real family and friends, that resonated deeply. Good endings are genuinely rare in television. The Duffers have talked about studying finales that worked and ones that failed. Game of Thrones is the obvious recent example of a finale that disappointed a massive fan base. Years of investment, incredible build-up, and then an ending that felt rushed and unearned to many people. Lost is another one, where the mysteries piled up and the resolution didn't satisfy everyone who'd spent years theorizing. The Sopranos ended with controversy, that cut to black, that left people arguing about what it meant. Breaking Bad stuck the landing beautifully, giving Walter White an ending that felt both tragic and inevitable. 6 Feet Under is considered one of the best finales ever, destroying audiences emotionally while providing perfect closure. The pressure on the Duffers is immense. They're trying to please everyone while knowing that's impossible. Different people want different things. Some want happy endings, some want tragedy, some want ambiguity. The goal, as they've said, isn't to please everyone. It's to stay true to their vision, to deliver the ending they've been building towards since the beginning. What would make it good? Character arcs that feel complete. Eleven figuring out who she is beyond her powers. Will finding peace with himself. Mike learning to be vulnerable. Hopper getting the family he deserves. The mythology explained enough that it makes sense without over-explaining and losing the mystery. Emotional resonance matters more than logical perfection. If the ending makes us feel something real, if it honours the journey these characters have been on, minor plot holes or unanswered questions won't matter as much. But if it's emotionally hollow, if the characters don't get meaningful moments, all the plot resolution in the world won't save it. Unexpected but inevitable is the sweet spot. The Duffers keep using that word, inevitable. They want the ending to feel like it had to happen this way, that there was no other path. But they also want it to surprise us. That's a tricky balance. Foreshadow enough that it doesn't come out of nowhere, but not so much that everyone sees it coming. What would make it bad? Deus ex machina solutions, where some new power or character saves the day out of nowhere. Character deaths that exist purely for shock value without serving the story. Ignoring setup from earlier seasons, being too neat and tidy where everyone gets exactly what they want, being too ambiguous where nothing feels resolved, cheap twists that prioritize being clever over being true to the characters. Why do we care this much about fictional people? Because good storytelling makes us care. We've spent hours with these characters, watched them struggle and grow and love each other. The escapism mattered, especially during the pandemic years when we needed stories about people fighting darkness and winning. The comfort of revisiting Hawkins, of knowing these characters would be there, that provided something real, even if the story itself was fantasy. This ending matters because Stranger Things matters. It's part of our cultural fabric now, part of how we talk about the 80s and nostalgia, and growing up and facing our fears. How it ends will determine how we remember it, whether it joins the pantheon of shows that nailed their finales or becomes a cautionary tale. Whatever happens on December 31st, we've been on this journey together. The characters, the creators, and all of us who tuned in week after week, year after year, waiting to find out what happens next. And that shared experience, that communal investment in a story, that's worth something, regardless of how it ends. Alright, so when you're actually watching the finale, here are the things you should keep your eyes on. The spin-off hint is going to be subtle. The Duffers have confirmed it's one small scene, easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Look for background details in any epilogue sequences, newspapers visible on tables, headlines that seem throwaway but reference incidents in other locations or different time periods. Radio broadcasts playing in the background of scenes, someone mentioning a relative or friend in another state dealing with strange occurrences. Visual callbacks are going to be everywhere. The Duffers love paralleling earlier seasons. Watch for returns to Season 1, locations like the Wheeler basement, the quarry, the woods where Will was found. Pay attention to lighting choices that mirror the show's early episodes. Colour grading shifts that signal emotional or narrative changes. Character positioning in group shots matters. Who's standing next to who? Who's separated? Who's in the centre of frame? The Duffers use blocking to tell emotional stories. If someone's isolated in a shot where everyone else is together, that's intentional. If two characters keep being framed together, that's telling you something about their connection. The music cues are going to be crucial. Not just the big pivotal song they've hyped up, but all the musical choices. When does the score swell? When does it go quiet? Silence in Stranger Things is often more important than sound. If a scene goes completely quiet, something massive is about to happen. Watch for who gets the final scene. Not the epilogue, but the last character moments before the resolution. That's usually who the story considers most important. In Season 4, it was Vecna revealing his plan. In Season 3, it was Hopper's letter. The final beat tells you whose story this really was. Easter eggs in costumes and props are classic Duffer Brothers. Someone wearing a specific band shirt or jacket that references the spin-off era. Objects in the background that seem random but aren't. The Duffers hid clues about Vecna throughout Season 4's early episodes that nobody caught until the reveal. They're doing the same thing here. For your first watch, focus on the emotional journey. Let yourself feel it without trying to catalogue every detail. The Easter eggs and hidden clues will still be there on rewatch. But that first experience of not knowing what's coming, of being surprised and devastated and hopeful, you only get that once. On the rewatch, that's when you go frame by frame. Pause on background details. Listen to dialogue for double meanings. Check what books are visible, what posters are on walls, what's playing on TVs or radios in the background. Reddit's going to explode within hours. Someone will have found the spin-off hint. Multiple someones will have conflicting theories about what it means. There will be spreadsheets and timelines and screenshot compilations. That's part of the fun, the communal detective work. Pay attention to the runtime structure. 2 hours gives them room for multiple acts. Expect the first hour to be final battle chaos. The middle section will probably slow down for emotional conversations and character moments. The climax hits around the 90-minute mark. Resolution and epilogue in the final 20 to 30 minutes. Basically, watch it with your heart first. Let yourself be in the moment. Experience the story as it unfolds. Cry if you need to, which you probably will. Then rewatch it with your brain, looking for all the details you missed while you were emotionally destroyed. The Duffers have earned enough trust that whatever they deliver is going to be intentional. Every choice, every frame, every line of dialogue has been thought through. So trust that first viewing, trust your emotional reactions, and know that the analysis and Easter egg hunting can come later. I'm not saying you need to prepare like you're going into battle, but also maybe prepare like you're going into battle. The practical stuff first. Tissues. Not like a few tissues, a box, within arm's reach. You're going to need them. Get comfortable wherever you're watching. Couch, bed, wherever you can fully settle in without distractions. Snacks are good, egos obviously, something comforting. Water bottle for hydration, because crying dehydrates you, and you're definitely going to cry. Phone on silent or in another room entirely. You don't want notifications breaking the immersion. This is a 2-hour finale that's been building for 9 years. Give it your full attention. Emotionally, just accept that you're going to be wrecked. Don't fight it. The Duffers didn't spend 3 years making this finale to let you walk away unbothered. Character deaths are probably coming. Sacrifices are definitely coming. Goodbyes are inevitable. Prepare for that gut punch feeling when someone you love doesn't make it out. The nostalgia hit is going to be intense too. Seeing these characters one last time, knowing this is goodbye to the show itself, that's its own kind of grief. You're not just saying goodbye to fictional people. You're saying goodbye to a piece of your life, to Thursday nights, or whenever you watched, to theorizing with friends, to all of it. Decide if you're watching alone or with people. Both have advantages. Alone means you can ugly cry without self-consciousness, pause when you need to, fully feel everything. With friends means you share the emotional load, process together, have people to hug when it gets too much. After the finale, be kind to yourself. Plan a low-key day. Don't schedule anything important for January 1st. You're going to need time to process, to sit with whatever happened, to maybe rewatch or read reactions or just stare at a wall for a while. Social media is going to be chaos. Decide your strategy now. Do you want to dive into Reddit threads immediately? Stay off everything for a day and experience it pure. Find a middle ground where you read reactions but don't engage. The show ending. That's a real loss. Not the same as losing a person, obviously, but it's still a thing you cared about going away. You get to feel sad about that. You get to grieve the end of an era. Look, we've been here before with other shows, but this one's different. This one's been with us through a lot. A pandemic, political chaos, personal struggles, growing up or growing older. So yeah, feel your feelings. Let it hit you, however it hits you. And then, eventually, we'll all move on. But for now, for these last few days before the finale, it's okay to be stressed and excited and scared and hopeful all at once. Okay, I've spent a lot of time talking about death and sadness, but what if there's actually hope here? We've been so focused on who's going to die and what's going to go wrong that we've maybe lost sight of what Stranger Things has always been about. Hope, friendship, love conquering darkness, underdogs winning against impossible odds. The show has never been cynical, even at its darkest moments. So what if most of the characters survive? What if Eleven loses her powers, but gains a normal life? The thing she's wanted since she first tasted, an Eggo. What if the government threat gets neutralized? Dr. K gets arrested, and the experimentation program's shut down for good? What if Hawkins recovers and actually thrives, becoming a town that knows what it survived and is stronger for it? The power of friendship isn't just a cliche in this show. It's been proven over and over. These kids have defeated monsters by working together, by refusing to give up on each other, by choosing love over fear. That's not naive storytelling. That's the core of what makes Stranger Things work. Maybe the Upside Down gets sealed peacefully, without massive casualties. Maybe Vecna's defeated, and the Mind Flayer gets trapped on the other side, and everyone makes it home. Maybe the cost is high, but not unbearable. Characters lose things, sacrifice things, but they survive. Bittersweet is different from tragic. Someone might lose their powers, but gain their freedom. Someone might have to leave Hawkins, but gets to live. Relationships might change, but people stay in each other's lives. Scars heal even if they leave marks. The Duffers aren't cynical creators. They make shows about kids being brave, about parents fighting for their children, about communities coming together against threats. Yes, they've killed characters, but always with purpose, always with meaning. They're not interested in grimdark hopelessness. And honestly, we need hopeful stories right now. The world is complicated and often dark. Escapism that tells us good people fighting for each other can win, that love matters, that sacrifice isn't always in vain, that's valuable. That's why people connect with this show. I know it's easier to expect the worst so you're not disappointed. Armor yourself against heartbreak by assuming everyone dies, but sometimes it's okay to hope for the best. To believe that maybe, just maybe, these kids who've been through hell get to be okay in the end. The ending can be emotionally satisfying without being a massacre. It can have weight and consequence without destroying everyone we love. The Duffers have earned enough trust that if they give us hope, it'll be earned hope, not cheap sentiment. So, yeah, maybe I'm setting myself up for disappointment. Maybe the finale's going to be as devastating as we fear. But until December 31st, I'm going to hope that it's not. That the kids are all right. That friendship wins. That the light pushes back the darkness one more time. We're almost at the end. Not of the finale, that's still a couple days away, but of this particular theory session, this late-night speculation fest. We've covered a lot tonight. Death predictions for just about everyone, the Mind Flayer mystery, and whether it's the real villain hiding in plain sight, Carly's suspicious behaviour, and the theories about what she's really up to, the mythology explanations, the wormhole revelation, the abyss exotic matter, all the physics and supernatural elements colliding, Henry Creel's briefcase memory, and what it might reveal about his transformation. We talked about power levels and whether the numbers add up for the kids to actually win this thing. Emotional predictions for all the relationships we've invested in. Epic moments we're hoping to see. From music to character badass scenes to mythology payoffs. The wild theories that probably won't happen but are fun to think about. The spin-off hints and what decade it might be set in. We acknowledged the loose ends that probably won't get tied up, accepted that some mystery is better than over-explanation. I gave you my actual predictions, the outcomes I think are most likely based on everything we know. And we talked about why this ending matters so much, why a Netflix show about kids fighting monsters has this kind of emotional weight. What are we sure of? It's going to be emotional. The actors cried filming it. We're going to cry watching it. Someone probably dies, or multiple someones. The mythology will get explained, at least the important parts. That music moment is going to destroy us. The spin-off hint exists somewhere in the finale, hidden and waiting to be found. We'll all have opinions, strong ones, regardless of how it actually ends. What don't we know? The actual ending, how it's going to feel in the moment, whether it satisfies or disappoints, or exceeds expectations. What surprises are coming that we haven't predicted? How we'll individually react to whatever happens. But here's what I'm grateful for. The Duffer Brothers for creating this world and these characters and sticking with their vision through 9 years. The cast for growing up on screen and giving us performances that made us care this much. The crew for making the Upside Down look real, for creating Hawkins and making it feel like a place we know. Netflix for supporting the show and giving the Duffers the resources to tell their story properly. And all of us, honestly. The fans who kept watching, who theorized and created art, and wrote stories and cosplayed and made Stranger Things into a community experience instead of just a show. The shared excitement every time a new season dropped. The collective gasping at cliffhangers, the arguments about character choices and plot developments. That communal energy is part of what made this special. In a couple days, we'll know what actually happens. All these theories will be proven right or hilariously wrong. We'll find out who lives, who dies, how the Upside Down story ends, whether the Mind Flayer appears, what the spin-off hint is. We'll experience whatever emotional journey the Duffers have crafted for us. Until then, we wait, we speculate, we prepare ourselves as best we can, and we remember why we fell in love with this show in the first place. A group of kids on bikes fighting monsters, found family protecting each other, darkness threatening to consume everything, and ordinary people choosing to fight back. Whatever happens on December 31st, we've been on this journey together, and that matters. And that's where we'll end tonight's journey, through theories and possibilities. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. I know it's been a long one, covering everything from cosmic horror to relationship dynamics to wild speculation about briefcases and time loops. But that's what these final days before the finale are for, right? Going through every possibility, preparing ourselves for whatever's coming, processing our feelings about a show that's meant something to us for 9 years. After the finale drops, I'll probably do some kind of reaction or analysis video. Maybe we'll go through what actually happened versus what we predicted, find that spin-off Easter egg together, talk about whether the ending worked or didn't, what it all meant. There's going to be a lot to unpack, and honestly, I'm going to need to process it with other people who care as much as I do. But for now, we wait. December 31st is almost here. The final episode, The Right Side Up, is coming whether we're ready or not. And judging by how much we've theorized and worried and hoped, I don't think any of us are truly ready. So until then, stay cozy. Maybe rewatch some favorite episodes, the ones that made you fall in love with the show. Prepare your emotions as best you can, though we both know that's probably futile. And remember that whatever happens, we got to be part of something special. Sweet dreams, and may the ending be worthy of everything that came before.